We'll never know exactly why God does things, but we now have a bigger perspective and a bigger purpose. My name is Chad Oliver, and this is my wife, Kristen.
And we want to tell you guys a story about what God has done in our lives over the last year. We have 4 kids, 2 girls and 2 boys.
With 4 children, we're about as busy as we can be. Sports, school, activities, church.
And then about a year ago, something happened in our family that stopped us dead in our tracks. Our youngest son, Ryder, who was 3 at the time, began to complain of headaches. He would come up to me throughout the day, probably 15 or 20 times, and say, "Mommy, my head hurts." I would rub it real quick, and he'd be on his way, going to play. At first, we didn't think too much about it. One Saturday morning in a hotel room, I had a feeling like I had never had before. I texted my sister and told her I knew something was wrong with my son.
So on March 26th, the same day as my wife's birthday, I took Ryder to the pediatrician to see what he could do to help.
Because it was my birthday, Chad had surprised me with a massage that I reluctantly went to. I nervously waited the entire time to hear what the pediatrician said.
As soon as I took Ryder into the pediatrician, he knew immediately what was wrong. He sent us over to Navicent Health, where 3 hours later, we found out something that no parent would ever want to hear. That he had a brain tumor.
Nothing can prepare you for that moment. Everything was a blur.
That same day, Ryder was life-flighted to CHOA, Children's Hospital of Atlanta. There was only room for 1 passenger, so my wife rode with him in the helicopter up there. I actually drove fastest I've ever driven in my life. I actually beat the helicopter there.
The worries and fears that rush over you in a moment like that are unreal. This could happen to somebody else's child, but not my child. This was real and surreal all at the same time. We were just pretty much in a daze.
I just remember breaking down, lying on the ground crying. Pastors came that afternoon. Everybody dropped everything. People came in that night. People got on airplanes from Indiana and Florida, came in the next day. It was just a whirlwind.
My sister's husband actually left a Secret Service detail just to be there.
In 2 days after we flew him to Atlanta, Ryder had brain surgery. We knew God was at work when he sent us to Atlanta. That night, Dr. Rubel, one of the top pediatric neurosurgeons, was on call.
All the other doctors and nurses told us that we had the A-team on our side. We were nervous because the scans showed a golf ball-sized tumor, but Dr. Rubel wasn't nervous at all. When the results came back, we learned that Ryder had medulloblastoma, grade 4 brain cancer. It's a very aggressive cancer that can spread down the spine. From that moment on, we lived in a fog. The first month is denial. Then we basically looked at each other and said our life and our relationship would be on hold.
We were in an unending cycle of being mad, being sad, and then just repeating it.
We never stopped praying, but we prayed angry.
We've been attending Ingleside for about 12 years, and I'm not sure how we could have gotten through all this without the love and support of the church.
We had a small group from the church that brought us groceries and left them on our front porch. And one of our friends actually started a meal train for us, and we never had to worry about what our kids were going to eat.
And a friend from work even had a playground built in the backyard.
When someone you know is grieving, the worst thing that you can do is try and find the right answers.
You don't know what I'm going through. You can't know unless you've been through it yourself.
The best thing you can do is to be there. Show up, provide. And with our family and friends, it was like the hands of God providing for us in ways that we couldn't even begin to provide for ourselves.
So many people in the community began praying for our little guy. They were willing to do anything they could to help us out and encourage him.
Some of the coolest things that happened were when the Bibb County Police Department came and visited Ryder. Sirens blaring, brought the whole SWAT team. It was super cool. and they prayed for him and even let him drive their remote control robot.
The fire department came. He was even featured on some news stations locally.
We had friends that went to Disney World, brought back a care package, and Mickey Mouse even FaceTimed.
Captain America came to see him in the hospital. Atlanta Falcons came to see him in the hospital.
There was a hashtag started for Ryder for people to keep up with his progress, #teamryder.
The Mercer football team made him captain for a game. They signed helmet, gave him jerseys, even did a chant.
Everyone just poured out their hearts and their prayers for us and for Ryder. There were times that Chad and I would sit in the hospital and read Facebook comments and text, and then we would swap phones and continue to read. It was just the perfect encouragement that we needed.
After Ryder's brain surgery, the doctor came to us and said, I got it. I got all of it. The spinal fluid is clear, and the tumor is 100% removed.
It was a hard decision to still do high-dose chemo, considering the risks. It was hard to know what was worse, the high-dose chemo or the cancer itself.
If Ryder was 4, they would have done radiation, which could have devastating lifelong effects on his brain. But since he was 3, they did chemo. It could save his brain, but had tons of potential side effects. They said Ryder would need physical therapy for at least 6 months. Potential paralysis, might not be able to speak. There was a high likelihood of all of that.
The thing about childhood cancer is that it's not just the cute, smiling pictures that we post online. Ryder was in pain a lot of the time. He had good days, but not all kids have good days.
There was a time before cancer that we saw a shirt that said cancer sucks. I kind of thought that was tacky, but after going through some of this, cancer does suck. I used to have to give Ryder shots every day. As a dad, probably the hardest thing I've ever done in my life.
Kids on the same floor as Ryder were quarantined and still fighting infection, some of them dying. When you're in that fight, it's hard not to put your child in their seat.
A friend of mine texted me and reminded me, Ryder's story was already written. I needed to focus on his journey, his path.
It was amazing because some of the doctors, as they were leaving the hospital room, would say, "Okay, Ryder, we're gonna go visit the sick kids now," because he was doing so well.
One of the frustrating parts about childhood cancer is there's so little funding for it. Only 4% of cancer research goes to childhood cancer.
And at the same time, they're having to give kids opioids, like morphine, to manage their pain, because the laws in Georgia do not allow safer remedies.
It's about money. It's all about money. The insurance companies own everything. They dictate everything, even when it comes down to the nourishment your kid receives when they can't eat real food.
I went in thinking that all the options would be laid on the table, but they're not. They're not allowed to be, because some of the best options are too expensive for the insurance companies. They would rather give your child $7 a day sugar water that you wouldn't even give your healthy kids, rather than $35 a day nourishment that would actually help them.
It's all about money, and our children are suffering because of the money and the politics of the situation. And we were desperate, so we took a risk for the sake of our son.
In Georgia, it is legal to own THC, the main active ingredient in cannabis, marijuana. But you can't grow it, you can't sell it, and you can't bring it across state lines, so there's no way to obtain it. But they do say that you can own it. So we turned to a local, modern political hero that helped people like us. With a very small amount of THC, a tiny fraction of a teaspoon, we were able to help treat Ryder's symptoms.
High-dose chemo time should have been death's door, but it wasn't. Unlike the other kids, Ryder was able to eat. We believe this is because of the THC oil instead of the opioids.
Now, THC doesn't heal you, but it did minimize his symptoms and increased his appetite.
In fact, Ryder set a record the 3rd round of high-dose chemo. We went home at 11 days instead of 22, like they were expecting.
Cancer sucks, but you're never really able to stress or emotionally process because you're always worried about the next thing.
We learned a whole new way to pray, not asking to get out, just to get through.
One of the ways my sister prayed for us was like in the story of Moses, when God parted the waters and made a way for the Israelites. She said, "We're going to pray for parted waters." And that's just what we did. And we prayed hard against all the horrible side effects, against the need to go to the pediatric ICU, hearing loss, and paralysis.
One of the side effects is mucositis. Mucositis is terribly painful sores that can go from the mouth all the way down the GI tract. We told the doctors that we serve a big God and that we weren't going to get the sores. We weren't participating in that. They didn't believe us. One of the nurses said to us in 24 years, there had only been 3 cases where she didn't have a child that got the mouth sores.
But Ryder made 4. The doctors were amazed. He never needed physical therapy, never got paralysis, and never lost the ability to speak.
Growing up, I always felt that God needed a little help. I would do my part, and He would do the rest. But then we prayed, God, this is way bigger than us. There's nothing we can do to help, and we need you. And He was there through it all.
We had t-shirts made for Ryder supporters that had the hashtag teamryder on the front and the verse we chose, Psalm 56:3, that says, "When I am afraid, I put my trust in you." We wanted something short and sweet that Ryder could memorize, and it's amazing to see how the Lord brought that through to completion.
After months of surgeries, MRIs, spinal taps, life-threatening sepsis, shots, and chemo, the day finally came.
October 12th, exactly 200 days after Ryder's diagnosis, he rang the bell and was pronounced cancer-free. It's almost harder after, because for a while you have a clear path. You come to terms with the difficult things that you have to do. I naturally have faith in God, but through all of this I questioned and my faith was shaken. Why my 3-year-old?
We feel like whatever God had to teach us through this crisis could have been taught a different way. It didn't have to be like this, but He brought us through. Even after this crisis, Ryder is considered to have cancer for 5 years. We have to have MRIs every 3 months and live in constant fear.
But both of our daughters are now going into the medical field to help find new ways to save the lives of kids like Ryder.
We'll never know exactly why God does things, but we now have a bigger perspective and a bigger purpose. No matter what you go through, trust God.